Okay, let's take a look at the box office from this past week. Total domestic box office was a little over 100 million, which is only a 3% drop, right? We're seeing it really holding week after week after week. It's not necessarily gangbuster numbers, but the big takeaway, and I've been saying this week after week as well, that this is really, as January really is the graveyard of the box office season. So really it's just the opportunity for all the films that opened in November, but especially December, to just keep making money. Because people want to go to the movies, right? But, if the options in front of them are less than desirable, they're gonna just keep throwing money at these movies that have been at the top week after week. So the biggest new movie, the only new movie to make it into the top 10 this week, was Flight Risk. This was a Mel Gibson movie starring Mark Wahlberg. Essentially, they're transferring Topher Grace, who I guess is like a key witness for some kind of crime trial, and Mark Wahlberg is like secretly posing as like the helicopter pilot, but he's actually there to kill Topher Grace, so he doesn't talk. He doesn't squeal on the other, his co-conspirators and whatever the crime is, right? Did not open super big, but it kind of fell right where people thought it was gonna. It opened around 11.5 million. I had projected it to make around 9 to 15 with a target of 12 million. So, not great. It did at least meet the projections, right? That you don't always see that. At least we haven't necessarily seen that week in the past couple of weeks. But again, the big concern is, it's made a little over 12 million worldwide, but off of a $25 million budget. So it's not a particularly expensive movie, but again, it just isn't bringing in the money that they would hope for. So as of right now, it's in the red. Now, that being said, plenty of things are in the red their first weekend, and then eventually, slowly over time make back their budget. But this has not been getting particularly good reviews either. Maybe it kind of scratches that itch of like, it feels very dated in terms of like the concept. Like it feels like you would see something like this in the 90s. So that might actually be a good in its favor. Because the people who are most going to the movies right now are older people and younger people. Like if you're like 35 to 55, you're not really going to the movies that much. It's really Gen Z and boomers. And then Gen X and millennials are kind of in this weird gray zone. So maybe it'll appeal to people. Again, it feels like a film kind of from a different era. But again, like I said, the main, takeaway from this week is just reinforcing this idea that all of these movies that came out, November and December are just still dominating. So at number one, still number one in its sixth frame. It didn't open at number one, I don't believe so. But it's kind of found its way up to the top. Really interestingly, is Mufasa the Lion King. It brought in around 14.6 million, only a 10% drop from the previous week. Of course, these numbers include MLK Day, so that also probably helps with this total weekly box office only being a 3% drop, kind of holding down the fort. Look at the legs on this thing. A 6 flat. So if you're new to the channel, basically the legs formula is essentially taking the total domestic box office for its entire run and then dividing it by its biggest weekend. Usually that's its opening weekend, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, right? So if it opens smaller and then opens in more theaters later, that could then be the metric, right? This is just it's a measure of how well is it kind of been making money week after week, as opposed to something that opens really big and then due to poor word of mouth or just bad advertising, it just kind of like just disappears, right? So what this number shows us is that it has been very sustainable. It's brought in almost $221 million domestically, 627-ish million worldwide. Not an amazing percent return. It was made for like $200 million. But again, considering how mediocre the movie, at least the perception of it is, I saw it and I thought it was fine. I thought it was at least a net positive. But it's not this cultural phenomenon by any stretch of the imagination. But the fact it's still here in the top 10, doing as well as it is at number one, again, I feel like it's been at number one for at least at least 3 weeks, I think speaks to both. I've talked about this many times before. I think it really helps the Lin-Manuel Miranda score. The fact that one of the songs was kind of turned into a semi-meme helps it. You know what I mean? Like, all publicity is good publicity. So I think it speaks to that. But again, it also speaks to there's not a lot of options, right? You know, and the one that it was kind of flipping around with was Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So interestingly, this has dropped a little bit. It's dropped 2 places from 2nd to 4th. Also in its 6th frame, so both of these they both opened the Friday before Christmas, and they're still here, but Sonic is tumbling a little bit more, right? So Sonic has made more domestically, but that lead is being shrunk every week. You know, before I was like, oh, well, there's like a pretty big gap domestically, but it's only about 5 million more now that I'm looking at it. And it's only made maybe a little bit more than 2/3 of Mufasa's worldwide box office. So, though that being said, it is a little bit better percent return because it was cheaper to make. I've talked about this before. I think you could attribute Mufasa doing better internationally just because it's you know, a little bit more basic. It's, you know, kind of a classic hero's journey. Speaks to fundamental the human condition, if you will, even though they're animals. Where Sonic 3 feels a lot more contextual to American pop culture. So it makes sense that would be trailing behind a little bit, though it is interesting considering Sonic is a international character, right? He is a Japanese character. So I'd be interested to see what the numbers are like in Japan. Part of me feels like maybe the Japanese wouldn't even like this movie because, again, it's essentially an American film in terms of its style, its tone, its objectives, its humor, and I think that explains why it's kind of trailing Mufasa internationally. Still in the you know, because Sonic dropped 2 places, that means that some two films have now taken 2nd and 3rd place. So jumping a spot from 3rd to now 2nd, we have One of Them Days in its 2nd frame, bringing in a little over 13 million. This is kind of the comedy with Keke Palmer and SZA. I was gonna go see it, I think, this week, but it was just too cold. It's in New York City. I don't know where my listeners are, so feel free to drop in the chat where you're watching from. But in New York City, it sucks because, you know, if I was living in the suburbs, even if it was ass cold, I could at least just go in my car and drive to a movie theater. So the amount of time I'm outside is only maybe like 5 minutes. Whereas in New York City, even if it's only a 20-minute commute from door to door from my apartment to the movie theater, it's mostly outdoors. You're walking to the subway. You know, if it's in Queens, like I live by the 7 train, which is an above ground train. So that's like waiting on the platform, above ground, cold wind chill. So it's gotten to a point where, depending on how cold it is, it's like I'm not gonna go. I'm gonna cancel I'm gonna reschedule just because I owe it to myself. I don't owe any of you anything. That's not really true. So this is, I was gonna go see this. It did get a jump, right? It had a 15% jump. And so far now, it's made around 25 million, a little more than that. That's both its domestic and worldwide numbers. And it was only made off of $14 million. So this is, I think, one that, if I'm not mistaken, did not, was still maybe in the partial red last week. Or at the very least still like in this yellow zone. So it's, you know, it's on its way, I think, to double that budget. Ideally, you want to double the budget because the budget does not account for marketing and advertising. I see here in the comments, Lorenzo Fletcher Productions. He's watching from Ohio. Or he or she, I don't mean to presume. You know, I don't know your first name or anything, but super glad to have you know from Ohio. I'm sure it's even colder than it is here. But, you know, again, most likely, unless you're living in like a major city in Ohio, you're probably driving wherever you're going. Also, Lorenzo, I did see your comment, but I'll save your comment for when I tackle that story, your other comment. Moving on here, we have Moana 2. Now in its 9th frame, so it's been in the top 10 for 2 months now. Actually jumped a spot, right? So it jumped from 6th to 5th place, coming back into the top 10, bringing just a little over $7 million. Again, only a 7% drop. So it's it is, again, not holding as well as Mufasa, right? Because most of this money that it made, its total domestic is around 450 million. I think it opened at like 200 something, right? So this is still pretty good, sustainable performance, but it is still kind of hindered by the fact that it opened so big and kind of has dropped steadily. Again, because the reaction to the movie has been kind of like an unenthusiastic thud, right? Though, again, it just speaks to the current climate of movies that this thing made over $1 billion worldwide, which is insane. Just insane if for no other reason, again, that it seems to generally be considered a mediocre movie. I did not go see this just because, again, I do not have the time to go see everything as much as I want to. And then when I heard it wasn't very good, I was just like, I'm not going to waste my time with this. But again, I think it's at least the number 3rd highest grossing movie from 2024. So the top 3 movies from 2024 were all Disney movies. And again, like I've said, they will take the wrong lessons from this and go, we need to stop making all this original crap. We just need to make more sequels and spin-offs to the properties that people already seem to care about. Just a couple other notes here. In its second week, we have dropping from 5th to 6th place, swapping with Moana, was Wolfman. Pretty sizable drop, though it's only sizable compared to the rest of the top 10. But this is like a pretty standard, I feel like, second week drop. You only brought in a little under 7 million. This has also not been getting particularly good reviews. Though it has at least crossed the initial budget threshold. It's made around $27.5 million worldwide, off of a $25 million budget. So it still has a long way to go. And I'm not super, super hopeful about this one. Couple other notes here, though. Wicked is still in the top 10. Very, very happy about this. It's in its 10th frame now, holding its 9th place spot, brought in a little over $4 million. Again, this is such a great... I'm an unabashed Wicked supporter. I feel like it's almost like we've turned on it, as we do every year with the Oscar frontrunner. We all turn on it, and then whatever wasn't the frontrunner, didn't have the target on its back, kind of assumes the position. But Wicked, it was phenomenal. And frankly, I'm surprised it's not going to get to $1 billion, which seems very unlikely at this point. When this thing came out, it just felt like it was everywhere. Though it has been holding really well, right? And even though it's not going to hit $1 billion, the fact that a nearly 3-hour musical, that isn't even the full musical, it's only the first part. The fact it's made this much, over 700 million worldwide, I think is a testament to the brand and in the quality of the movie. And the meminess of it, like the weird press tour with Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, that all constitutes a winning formula, right? Though the issue that I feel like companies don't realize is you can't manufacture that was not planned. That weird, bizarre press tour, that's just how they are, right? And again, we're also seeing here a complete unknown with a really, really strong legs right behind Mufasa. This did not open super, super big. And as you can see, the percent return is still not great, right? Because it's made $74 million. Worldwide, it was made for $60 million. So, I think now that the Oscar nominations have come out, you're going to see some of these films get a little bit of a bump. And that's what, and you probably saw that with this week as well, but now you're really going to see some of these films that, are still in the top 10, maybe the top 20, that have been doing okay. They're going to either get in more theaters or more people are going to want to go see them, and you're going to see more ticket sales for those movies. Notably, though, Nosferatu did not really get much love from the Oscars, though it did get a little bit. It dropped from 7th to 10th place, though. This has been a surprise financial success. It's brought in, $160+ million worldwide off of a $50 million budget, which I still have yet to see Nosferatu, but I'm just so happy because I really like Robert Eggers as a filmmaker, and I was really nervous after how The Northman didn't do very well financially. I was really worried his career was about to stall. So this is kind of giving it a little new, like another little, a new lease on life, if you will. Okay, and looking ahead to this upcoming weekend, we have Dog Man. This is like a spin-off of the Captain Underpants movies. I was a big Captain Underpants fan as a kid, but I don't remember Dog Man at all. That might have been like a later addition. It's like another comic book that the characters in the book create. So this seems to be fun. I remember liking the Captain Underpants anime movie from when I was younger. But I don't remember this at all. So I kind of lost my train of thought, but I don't remember this at all. The trailer seemed cute. It's not going to be like a smash by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm dubious if critics will like this movie, but I think it'll be kind of cute. It's projected to make around 21 to 30. I'm going to put a target around 26. Again, not very big, but you know, for January, this will be the last January weekend, barely, because it'll just be Fridays the 31st, and then we'll move into February. And that's where you start to see, you know, the shackles of the early box off, the early year of the early part of the box office year. You see those shackles undone. Just quickly before moving on, I see Viviana's comment. Are people turning on Wicked now? It's not so much turning on it, people saying they hate it, but I think the hype, it felt like the week after it opened, it felt like a cultural phenomenon, in a way that felt like, oh, this is going to sweep the Oscars. This is going to completely dominate everything. Whereas now it doesn't feel like that anymore. It's not that there's active negative. It just feels like the fervor, the positive fervor has kind of dulled in a sense. And then we have Companion. This is a kind of a sci-fi rom-com, if you will. So basically the premise is so here's the letterbox blurb if you're interested. A billionaire's death sets off a chain of events for Iris and her friends during a weekend trip to his lakeside estate. I think she's meant to be like an android of some kind or like a robot. You know, I don't really know much about this, but again, it's not tracking to open particularly big. It's only, you know, I'm going to put it around 7 to 15 million with an 11 million target. And then finally, we have this propagandistic, hawkish slop called Valiant One. So the premise is that a, you know, military, American Army or Marine or whatever, you know, helicopter crashes in North Korea. And in order to avoid an international incident, they have to quickly move across, you know, across the border to South Korea. And Laura Condor's in it. I saw the trailer for it when I was at some random other movie, and it kind of looked incredible because it looked so awful. Like, I was like, this actually would be like a really fun movie to go see, just for how like jingoistic it is. But again, this is not projected to open very big at all, only around 2 to 5 million, with a 3 million target. That's where I'm going to put it. So there's a very good chance this won't even make it into the top 10. Wow, what an interesting story. I'm sure you have some thoughts about the topic, so comment below, let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really, really helps people find the channel and makes me feel all warm inside. Until next time, I'm Peter Mancuso. Peace out.